Well, time now to take a look at the morning papers. Here with me to review them are the journalist and author Yasmin Alibhai-Brown and the broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. So very good morning to both of you. Lovely to see you both on a bank holiday. Thank you for joining us at this early hour. So let's take a look at some of the front pages, shall we? Yasmin, I know that you've picked out the Daily Mail's front page to kick us off. And this was King Charles yesterday backing this research into the monarchy's links to slavery.
Yes, and you know, it is time this country started addressing the gross and lengthy exploitation that built up so much of the wealth of this country. So that's good. He's agreed that research can be carried out. But what's interesting is the Daily Mail front page immediately saying, oh no, this is terrible because either the royal family or the nation might have to pay reparations. Well, you know, we got the Germans and Japanese to pay reparations. It's like this country never wants to acknowledge past injustice. It doesn't mean that the country's done nothing but bad, but there was some bad stuff done. If he's serious, I mean, we know now from the Guardian reports how much hidden wealth the royal family has. This may be a very good thing, and I say that as a non-royalist.
Well, yes, and I think the conclusions of this research won't be until 2026. And in the meantime, Buckingham Palace keen to say that the King takes this issue profoundly seriously, but it's not clear yet, is it, how far that goes, whether or not the royal family will agree to pay any compensation. So lots of questions over those years ahead while the research carries on. Lucy, should we move to the Sun's front page? And this is something that I think we talk about on a lot of bank holidays and holidays, don't we? That travel disruption, but it has been particularly bad this Easter holidays or school holidays, hasn't it? The Sun are calling it Bad Friday.
Well, I was going to say that there doesn't seem to be anything more reliable than photos around Easter of either chocolate or bunnies or queues and traffic jams on motorways. But there does seem to have been a bit of a perfect storm this year because we've also had strikes at Heathrow this week, which have affected a lot of departures. We've had strikes in France that have affected flights leaving the UK. We've had queues that have gone on for miles at Dover as passport checks have taken far too long, and there's a big debate about what is causing that, whether that's just the overwhelm of the number of people or whether it's Brexit related. And then we've also got the pretty standard queues on the motorways as so many people flee. And as you pointed out in your weather report, you know, the weather is actually meant to be quite fair for a change. So maybe more people than ever. But I think it also speaks to the way in which other stories are blending together, as I say, industrial action, issues around Brexit, or whether the French have enough passport booths either on this side of the channel or on their side of the channel. And it just means that what should be a really enjoyable thing to go away, to kick back and have some rest and relaxation, just has that added stress to it, which is the last thing many of us need.
And I think you might have forgotten engineering works on the railways, just to throw that in and cheer everybody up a little bit more this morning. So yes, you're absolutely right. Lots of challenges. I think the queues at Dover so far don't look so bad as last weekend, at least, where some people were queuing for up to 16 hours. But we'll get an update on that actually shortly. In the meantime, Yasmin, take us to the Guardian's front page. This is a call for not so many politicians and aides being put into the House of Lords, isn't it?
Yeah, not just more, not more politicians and aides, but funders and donors who have nothing to contribute really. That we need expertise in the House of Lords, and we do have some very serious people with genuine expertise in business, in law, in science, and so on, but not nearly enough because in some ways in the last many years, the Lords has become a kind of club into which you stick your mates. And I think this is terrible because it's an important second chamber, which doesn't have the power of the Commons, but does need to scrutinise the laws that are being passed. And at the moment, I know 5 peers who have never been in the Lords since they got their little, gowns and things in their ceremony. How is that okay?
Well, yes, and a huge debate about the House of Lords and its usefulness and its numbers as well. And this is John McFall, isn't it? Lord McFall making this call. He says he's going to meet with Rishi Sunak and ask him to lift the cap, limiting the number of non-party expert peers that can be created. So we'll see if he gets anywhere with that. Lucy, the Times...
Yeah,
go on.
Peers than ever now.
Well, that's the other question. If you lift the cap, you end up with more people.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. So the Times front page, Lucy, next. This is the junior doctors' strike planned to start on Tuesday. It's 4 days, and warnings that it could have real repercussions.
Well, I think already there are huge repercussions from the strikes that have taken place already. But as you say, next week there's going to be 96 hours of junior doctor strikes. The British Medical Association is saying that if a really credible offer comes to the table, that they might stop those strikes. But I think we also need to look at this in the wider context. We've already had an NHS that has been struggling since COVID with a massive amount of overwhelm due mainly to incredible backlogs. We've had millions and millions of people whose treatment has been delayed. And now what many of those millions are going to be facing is even more delay next week. And if this credible offer is not forthcoming, then there could be consultants also going out on strike with the junior doctors in future strikes. So what we're looking at is an even more severe case. We've got the head of the Guy's and St Thomas's NHS Trust saying that patient safety will be compromised, which is a really shocking thing for anybody to hear, because you just simply don't know what is going to happen. We've got a 4-day bank holiday weekend, and research has shown that quite a lot of people have accidents over bank holidays as they get out of their normal routine and try new things, or they maybe end up doing some DIY and they fall off a ladder. I mean, there are lots of people who could be unexpectedly affected by this strike, who hitherto haven't been sitting around waiting for an operation. But our hearts really go out partly to the doctors who are so overwhelmed, so overworked, but also for the people whose operations, whose diagnoses, or whose treatment is just going to be pushed further and further back.
Well, yes, it's not a happy prospect the week ahead, is it, Yasmin? I don't know what your view on this is, because the two sides do seem a long way apart. The BMA have talked about a pay rise of 35%, although they have signalled that they are open to negotiation. But there doesn't seem to be any coming together of the two sides. They still seem a long way apart, and the prospects of that strike going ahead look very real.
Yeah, and I agree with Lucy that, I do feel for the NHS staff. We stood outside clapping for them, but we don't want to give them... I mean, they worked through the most difficult time of their careers, of our history, really. And I think both sides have a total responsibility to come together. But I do think people have the right to strike, and I think it is up to government to manage this better. But we've just seen what's happening in France. It is extraordinarily difficult at the moment, this kind of clash between the population or certain sectors of the population and government. I wouldn't want to be there, but this has to be resolved because lives will be lost.
Well, yes, and those clashes are going to increase when you've got inflation running at 10% or so, won't they? Let's take us on to a story inside the Eye that you've spotted, Lucy. This is the row over a new type of meat packaging, isn't it?
Yes, this is a really intriguing story. I can't help but think that it's partly been created in order that headline writers can talk about people not mincing their words, which is always great for a sort of newspaper pun. But it's about the fact that Sainsbury's have changed their packaging for their meat so that it looks, in my view, more like meat. You may remember the days when you went to a butcher and they gave you the meat and it looked like meat and it didn't look necessarily that appetizing, but then you cooked it and it was delicious. I think we've become very sanitized and very disconnected from our sources of food, what it really looks like. You have all sorts of situations where supermarkets, for example, reject fruit because it's a bit knobbly or vegetables because they're not the right shape. We want everything to look perfect, and we don't want to think about what food actually looks like. So
Yeah.
some of the comments in this article are talking about how people think it looks like a spare kidney. Well, that's meat too, and people eat kidneys. So I think Sainsbury's should stick to their guns.
And it looks like they are, because they're saying it uses so much less plastic. We're out of time for this hour, but I'm very happy to say you'll be back in the next hour, won't you? So Lucy and Yasmin, see you then. Thanks very much indeed.